Good morning, everyone. I am Sophia Nang from Group 1, and today we are going to discuss wastewater. We are going to learn what wastewater is, as well as its different types, namely domestic, industrial, and agricultural wastewater. We are also going to present two laws concerning wastewater, which are RA 9275 and DAO 2016-08. But first, let me introduce the rest of my group. Here we have Dekar Capadicio, Clea Atinenza, and Derek Esteban. Without further ado, let us begin. As humans, we need water in order to survive. We use it for drinking, bathing, cleaning. In fact, up to 60% of our body is composed of stuff. Water is also used in every industry, especially in mining, pharmaceuticals, and agriculture. It just shows how essential water is in our everyday lives. But water is a finite resource, much like any resource here on Earth. As such, when we use it up, it becomes wastewater. But what exactly is wastewater? Let us watch this video to further understand what it is.
In today's video, we're going to take a look at wastewater treatment. So we'll cover the different sources of wastewater and how we can treat it, so that we can either reuse it or safely put it back into natural water sources, like rivers or the ocean. Let's start with the three main sources of wastewater that you need to be aware of: domestic, agricultural systems, and industrial. Domestic waste is probably the one that you're most familiar with, as it just refers to household waste, like the water from your showers, sinks, and toilets. As soon as this water gets flushed down the drain, it goes into the sewers, and heads for sewage treatment plants, which we'll see later. Agriculture also produces loads of wastewater, particularly in the forms of nutrient runoff from fields and animal waste from farms. And finally, industrial sources refers to things like factories that make and use chemicals. Regardless of the particular source though, all of the wastewater has to be treated to make it safe before we can properly dispose of it. For domestic and agricultural sewage, this generally requires removing any organic matter or harmful microbes which could pollute the fresh water and pose health risks. In addition to this, wastewater from industrial processes often contains harmful chemicals as well, and so requires extra steps to remove them.
First type is by me is domestic wastewater. What exactly is domestic wastewater? It is described as the wastewater originating primarily from toilets, bathrooms, and kitchens in residential settlements. When we talk about domestic wastewater, we talk about the water used for cooking, cleaning, and showering, as well as the water used for toilet flushing and laundry. It can be categorized into four types: yellow water, brown water, black water, and gray water. Yellow water is simply water with human urine, and brown water is human feces flushed with water. Black water is a combination of brown and yellow water consisting of human feces mixed with urine. Gray water, on the other hand, is any water other than toilet water that is used inside houses, like kitchens, including water from sinks and laundry. Let's start discussing the different properties of domestic wastewater, starting with its physical properties. Domestic wastewater typically has a gray color, little solid substances, which is both organic and inorganic, and a bad smell. Domestic wastewater typically contains 0.1% total solids, and according to a study by Fahad et al. Done in 2019, the total solids vary in concentration from 350 milligram per liter to 1,200 milligram per liter. Of course, not all the solids are dissolved in the water. Some of them are suspended. Normally, 30% of the solids are suspended and the remaining 70% dissolved in the salt water. Dissolved solids range from 250 milligram per liter to 850 milligram per liter. On the other hand, suspended solids range from 100 milligram per liter to 350 milligram per liter. Food scraps, grease, soap, detergents, oils, as well as metals, salts, toilet paper, feces, and grit are among the typical solid substances found in domestic wastewater. Moving on, let us talk about the chemical characteristics of the domestic wastewater. Now, given that the domestic wastewater comes from households, chemicals from households products, the typical ones, including shampoo, soap, and detergents, are sure to be present. Normally, 70% of domestic wastewater is composed of organic compounds, and the remaining 30% is inorganic. Let's start by talking about the organic substances found in domestic wastewater. This includes volatile fatty acids, total organic carbon or TOC, chemical oxygen demand or COD, sugars, fibers, proteins, coloring, etc. It is important to know that the organic matter present in domestic wastewater varies in different cities and countries due to different living conditions and habits. It is also important to know that 55 to 60% of the total organic matter dissolves in the water. Moving on to the inorganic substances found in the domestic wastewater, which includes heavy metals and elements such as nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, chloride, and other toxic materials. In fact, 85 to 90% of these organic substances dissolve in water. Lastly, let us discuss the biological properties of domestic wastewater. Of course, there are going to be microorganisms in domestic wastewater, and those microorganisms can be harmful to humans. These microorganisms are mostly from, feces and food scraps. Some of the common types of microorganisms in domestic wastewater includes bacteria and protista. It includes viruses and bacteria, which is not limited to the things that I will say, including cholera vibrio, salmonella typhosa, and shigella. Now that we're done with domestic wastewater, I'll pass the floor to Clea to discuss the second type of wastewater, which is industrial wastewater.
The next type of wastewater is industrial wastewater, wherein it is one of the major sources of contamination in the environment. Industrial wastewater is the aqueous waste that occurs from materials being dissolved or suspended in water, usually during the use of water in an industrial production process or the cleaning activities that take place alongside that process. This had detrimental consequences for both the ecosystem and human life, leading to the next type of wastewater is industrial wastewater, wherein it is one of the major sources of contamination in the environment. Industrial wastewater is the aqueous waste that occurs from materials being dissolved or suspended in water, usually during the use of water in an industrial production process or the cleaning activities that take place alongside that process. This had detrimental consequences for both the ecosystem and human life, leading to major water contamination issues. When water is used in an industrial process, many different types of waste, intermediate products, and raw materials are introduced into the water. In actuality, wastewater is an essential byproduct of modern industry and a significant contributor to the contamination of the aquatic environment. To further understand the content of industrial wastewater, the physical, chemical, and biological properties will be discussed. According to a study by Alterkmani in 2013, for the physical properties, it includes the solid's content, color, odor, and temperature. A wastewater's total solids are made up of both soluble compounds that are dissolved in water and insoluble or suspended particles. In a typical wastewater, between 40% and 65% of the particles are suspended. These insoluble or suspended particles are determined by drying and weighing the excess, which is removed by filtration and when it is heated up. The volatile solids are eliminated, which are presumed to be organic in matter. Around 60% of the suspended particles are typically soluble in the municipal wastewater. Total solids may be composed of floating matter, which can be wood, twigs, leaves, seeds, or human waste. Soluble solids mean substances such as silt, organic, detritus, plankton, or sand which settle to the bottom of a water body or water column. Colloidal matter and matter in solution. When it comes to color, it is employed to evaluate the overall health of wastewater. If light brown, it is less than 6 hours old. If it is a light to medium gray color, it would mean it has undergone some degree of decomposition, and if it exhibits a dark gray or black color, it is typically infected with bacteria. Furthermore, its temperature varies occasionally and its geographic location. It also contains an unpleasant odor wherein there are different offensive odors that specific industrial wastewater produces. Moreover, turbidity is also included as it is a measure of light transmitting properties of water and also used to test the quality of water. Let us now head to the chemical properties of industrial wastewater. Industrial wastewaters are frequently the main cause of water contamination. To understand the chemical fingerprints of wastewater to identify pollution sources and create effective water treatment techniques, it is crucial to chemically characterize various industrial wastewater kinds. Common soil contaminants in industrialized and marketed areas include volatile organic chemicals or VOCs like benzene, toluene, xylene, etc. Underground storage tank leaks are one of the more frequent sources of these pollutants. Other significant sources of soil VOCs include improperly disposed solvents and landfills constructed before the implementation of the present strict rules. Numerous organic compounds are categorized as priority pollutants, including acetaldehyde, formaldehyde, and many more. Some examples of organic matter would be fats, oil, grease, surfactants, and phenols. If there is an organic matter, of course, there's an inorganic matter that can be found in the wastewater. These includes nitrogen and phosphorus, sulfur, and heavy metals. For the parameters of organic content, it consists of BOD, which is biochemical oxygen demand, and COD, which is chemical oxygen demand. For BOD, it involves the measurement of the dissolved oxygen used by microorganisms in the biochemical oxidation of organic matter. While in COD, it is the estimate of oxygen required for the portion of organic matter in wastewater that is subjected to oxidation. It is also a metric for assessing the biological activity of both biologically inert organic matter and biologically active organic matter in water. And lastly would be the biological properties. So it can't be denied that the industrial wastewater is also like the all kinds of wastewater. It also contains bacteria, and these certain harmful organisms are present in some businesses, such as slaughterhouses. Others also claim that yeast and starch are produced by molds and fungi, which are harmful organisms that also can be found in industrial wastewaters. So I'll give the floor to Pia to introduce the agricultural wastewater.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Clea. The composition of agricultural wastewater can vary greatly depending on the source of it. For example, wastewater from irrigation may contain traces of fertilizer like phosphates or nitrates, while dairy and wheat processing produce byproducts like whey. Wastewater may also come from washing animal products and pens, which means that feces does have a large percentage in agricultural wastewater. This would bring its own set of microorganisms which both assist in decomposition as well as disease, as these bacteria and fungi do have a negative health benefit towards us if we are exposed. All in all, however, agricultural wastewater can be defined as wastewater that originates from farm activities, such as irrigation, washing, and production. Because the sources of wastewater are so diverse, it could contain a multitude of contaminants, which I will discuss in further detail. As you can see here, I have three categories, much like the other presenters had, with the physical, chemical, and biological aspects. While the physical and chemical aspects of agricultural wastewater are quite similar to the other two, so I'll be kind of more vague there. The biological characteristics are where it shines the most. Now, okay, first, the physical characteristics. Depending on the source, the color of the wastewater can be a light, foggy, yellowish, white, gray, or brown. Substances such as fats, protein, feces, dirt, and plant matter affect the color and the odor of the wastewater, as well as its consistency. High amounts of such contaminants also increase the viscosity of the water, acting more like a sludge as compared to a regular liquid. Agricultural wastewater is also characterized by a large gap in average particle size as compared to domestic wastewater, with 10 raised to the third power atomic measurement units at smallest and greater than 10 nanometers at largest. These are mainly soluble organic matter according to the study done by Stefan Siri and Morgan Roth. Additionally, the turbidity of agricultural wastewater tends to be quite low. Due to these compounds, temperature may also be higher than the usual temperature of standing water due to ongoing decomposition of the particulates within. But that does make me wonder, what do these particulates break down into? Well, that leads me to my next point. The most common chemicals found in agricultural wastewater are phosphates and nitrates, as those are mostly used in industrial fertilizers. Not only do they provide additional nutrients to plants, it is also some of the components that bacteria, fungi, and other such creatures break down organic matter into. Other associated elements are carbon, oxygen, and sulfur, though the last one is not as common as the rest. Pesticides such as cyfluthrin and tefluthrin may also be found in agricultural wastewater, which is dangerous to aquatic wildlife if released without treatment. This is because this class of pesticides, also known as pyrethroids, cause a hyperexcitable state in both insects and fish. Symptoms include tremors, incoordination, hyperactivity, and paralysis, which is quite bad for wildlife. While a common and effective pesticide, users must ensure that such chemicals do not reach open bodies of water. Milk permeate, whey, and other such organic materials are also common. During the refinement and pasteurization of milk, and the sanitation of eggs also involves chlorine cleaners. Wastewater may also come from slaughterhouses, as the blood must be cleared off the floors and meat. Again, like I mentioned a while ago, these compounds are broken down, right? But who does the breaking down? Well, I will tell you in my next parts. A vast majority of agricultural wastewater is used to clean up the pens of livestock. Dirt from these places are the perfect home for several organisms due to the temperature and the abundance of nutrients for their kind. These creatures can be categorized into 4 different groups. You have the viruses, the bacteria, the protozoa, and the parasites. Some of the common microbes that fall into these categories are the following. First, we have the Salmonella, the Campylobacter, and the E. coli for bacteria. Now, some of these may be familiar to you because, especially Salmonella, since that's the one usually attributed to the cross-contamination of chicken meat. Most of these can cause gastrointestinal distress and diseases such as diarrhea, cholera, and dysentery. Typhoid, enteritis, and Legionnaire's disease are also common diseases that can be caught from wastewater. As for parasites, we have the Giardia, the Toxoplasma gondii, and roundworms, which usually originate either from animal or human feces after being used as fertilizer. According to a study done in 1997, intestinal parasites are still a prevalent problem for people under 19 years of age and not only depend on the cleanliness of the food and the environment, but also the socioeconomic status and the educational level of the people. Next, for protozoas, we have the Platyophira, the Giardia intestinalis, and the Clopodoa. Most protozoa tend to be good in wastewater management, and since especially they're used for the treatment and refinement, which will be discussed further by the next group. However, there are certain species that can cause diseases such as amoebiasis, diarrhea, and dysentery, much like bacteria. This mainly occurs when somebody comes into contact with untreated wastewater, which usually happens when you go swimming or drinking it, so don't do that. However, protozoa tend to do more good than harm compared to the next microorganism to be discussed. And these are the viruses. Polio, hepatitis A, and various other enteroviruses are among the most dangerous microorganisms to inhabit wastewater. As not only does it take only a few of them for someone to get infected, they are also hard to detect and mutate really quickly, especially when incomplete medical care is presented. Now, the most vulnerable to these effects, especially the mutations, is the young, the old, and the immunocompromised. And much like parasites, they tend to travel through fecal matter. Now, I will pass the floor to Derek to discuss further the laws that are here to protect us and our bodies of water from pollution.
Thank you, Sophia. The Republic Act 9275, also known as the Clean Water Act of 2004, is a law established during the 12th Congress. Its goal is to shield the Philippines' water resources from man-made pollution. It outlines a thorough and integrated strategy for pollution prevention and minimization using different sectoral scopes with the help of experts to ensure that the thresholds stipulated are both achievable and safe for both humans and the environment. The law outlines various measures and mechanisms to achieve this goal, including the establishment of a national water quality management fund to finance programs and projects related to water quality management under Section 9. The imposition of penalties and sanctions for violations of the law, including fines, imprisonment, and revocations of permits and licenses under Section 19. The creation of a water quality management area, which is a delineated geographic area with specific water quality concerns that require special management measures under Section 24. The requirement of industries and establishments to obtain a permit from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, DENR, before discharging wastewater into bodies of water under Section 27. The establishment of a monitoring and surveillance system to assess the water qualities of bodies of water across the country under Section 32. The Clean Water Act of 2004 is an essential piece of legislation in the Philippines, as it helps protect the country's water resources and ensures that they remain safe for human consumption and other beneficial uses. The Administrative Order number 2016-08 of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, promulgating the water quality guidelines and general effluent standards of 2016, is issued to provide guidelines for classifying the nation's water bodies, identifying time trends, assessing the stages of water quality, degradation, or improvement, determining the necessity of taking action to prevent, control, or mitigate water pollution, and designing water quality management areas. Additionally, the General Effluent Standards, or GES, are established by this order. The RA 9275 is a law that aims to protect and improve the quality of the country's water resources. DAO 2016-08, on the other hand, refers to the Department Administrative Order number 2016-08, which is an implementing guideline of the RA 9275. Both RA 9275 and DAO 2016-08 have their equal share in safeguarding both the environment and humans. Both laws touch on the issue of having clean water in the Philippines while having rather distinct foci. DAO 2016-08 focuses more on standards and regulations than RA 1975 did in order to safeguard the nation's water quality. A more thorough explanation of the various categories of water bodies is provided in DAO 2016-08, along with extensive guidelines. Now I'm going to pass the mic to Dekar to conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We cannot avoid producing wastewater because we consume water on a daily basis. We can, however, decrease the harm that our wastewater causes to the environment and to us humans. This is why wastewater treatment plants are created in the first place, and that topic will be discussed by the next group. We can also lessen wastewater in our simple ways, like, taking short showers, turning off the switch when we're not using water, and using leftover waters, like water used when washing rice, which can still be used to water plants. By doing this simple ways to minimize producing wastewater, we can help to reduce the risk of polluting our environment as well as minimizing the risk for us humans. So what do we learn today, guys? First, we learned the definition of wastewater as well as the different types of it. We also learned the physical, chemical, and biological properties of each type. And in addition to that, we also learned the laws concerning wastewater, namely the RA 9275, or also known as the Clean Water Act of 2004, as well as the DAO 2016-08. That would be all for our presentation. We are Group 1, and here are our references. Once again, We are Group 1, and thank you for your time.